All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in another episode of BOPCAST. Today on BOPCAST, I have my friend. I think we met maybe originally on LinkedIn, I believe, and it went from there. His name's Austin Belcak. He owns a company called Cultivated Culture, and we're going to obviously go into kind of the details of what you do. Very powerful stuff that you're doing with your business. But if you could, Austin, just give us, maybe a brief overview of what you do. I know you're founder, CEO, but do some other things as well. And with Cultivated Culture, if you just, give us, our listeners, just a little bit of your background, and we'll probably take it from there.
Yeah, that sounds good, Ryan. Well, first off, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. But yeah, so I do a couple things right now. I still work full time at Microsoft. I've been doing that for 5 years or so now. I'm a director of partnerships there. So my whole goal is to basically get out there and find people who will partner up with us to help expand the reach of the message and the products and all that good stuff. And outside of that, like you mentioned, I founded Cultivated Culture about 4.5 years ago now. And the whole premise is to teach people how to land jobs they love without applying online. So that really stemmed out of my personal experience graduating from college with a pretty bad GPA, a job I hated, not in the field that I wanted to be in. And so I needed to figure out how to make that jump. And it was not easy. It took a lot of trial and error. It took a lot of experimentation, a lot of failure and rejection, but eventually made it over to Microsoft. And a lot of people kind of came out of the woodwork and asked me, how I made it happen. So I wrote everything down in a blog post and I published it, and I did a little promo behind it, and it got a really, really good response. All these people were kind of, showing up and saying, hey, I went through the same thing, and this strategy just makes a lot of sense. So the rest is history. I kind of picked it up from there. And that was back in 2016, starting from scratch. Now we're at about, I think the community is about 250,000 people total now. We got a pretty solid following on LinkedIn and on the email list. And we've helped people get hired at, if you can think of a company, we've helped people get in the door there. Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Tesla, SpaceX, Apple, Amazon, Goldman Sachs, the list goes on. But that's pretty much been it. We essentially teach people how to get in the door without applying online, so they don't have to worry about, their resume getting sucked into that black hole and never being heard from again.
I love everything about what you just said and what you do with that company. And so, even with this podcast, it's not directly, maybe towards that age bracket, but a lot of my audience is that age bracket. So that's why I had originally had younger professionals and younger people on, but now I'm having the financial advisors, the people who run larger businesses. And it's like, they can take knowledge from those people as well. And luckily, and you fit kind of both those categories. You're younger and you own your own business, but you also work, I guess, a 9 to 5, but I guess you work from home, right? So, so you're kind of doing it all. And I've gone from the blue collar to the white collar to the business to, everything too. So it's great to kind of get that full, well-rounded view. But I'd like to kind of go into kind of maybe before or during your start to the business and you transitioning from college to this job, that first job that you got that you mentioned, in the bio of like, oh, I hated this job. I didn't like what I was doing. I wasn't making any money. I saw these other, which, now is even more prominent, seeing these Instagram guys, these LinkedIn guys. Oh my God, they're on yachts and jets and they're like 25. What am I doing? What am I doing here? Right. So what was the job, and you don't have to say like the company or anything, but what was the job that you got after college? And then what about that made you kind of, realize, okay, I need to find a better way of doing this?
Yeah, for sure. So, I'd always kind of wanted to start my own thing. That was sort of my goal from the very beginning of, when we started thinking seriously about careers in college. But, I also didn't do too much work towards figuring that out for the most part. I tried to start a couple of things and they fell flat on their face. And, I had to go out and get a job after college. And so I ended up with this one that kind of got dropped in my lap from my roommate's dad. He was a doctor. I had a biology degree. Medical device sales was kind of this field that played into both of those things. And so I was sort of a shoo-in for an internship junior year. They offered me the job at the end of junior year. I didn't think anything about cost of living or what the actual job would entail. I just kind of said yes. So I could say that I had a job, and it ended up being a pretty interesting gig. So basically, if anybody who's gotten a hip replacement or a knee replacement or whatever, the company I worked for made the implants that went in the patient. But they entrusted me and a bunch of other sales reps to be in the operating room with these doctors, kind of like consulting on the product. So surgeries start pretty early in the morning, usually around 6 a.m. But I was like the bullpen rep or the backup rep. So, one of the actual reps would give me a call night before and say, hey, my kid's sick at daycare, or I've come down with something, I can't cover cases tomorrow. Can you get out here? So our territory is North and South Carolina, which are, two pretty big states. And I was driving from Charlotte to sometimes to Asheville or Hilton Head, 2.5 hours each way. And so I'd have to be up at 3:30 in the morning to get out there by 5:30 in order to, get ready for these cases at 6. So that was pretty miserable in and of itself. But then on top of that, my starting salary was around $35K, and it was just way below what I needed to make ends meet. So I quickly racked up like 15 grand worth of credit card debt in the first couple of months, just, paying off my car and getting groceries and, not even doing anything crazy. And so that was not the life that I sort of envisioned for myself, right? And we're always told that if you go to college, you'll have these opportunities, you'll get your foot in the door. Why else are you paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a degree? And things just weren't lining up. So I knew I needed to make a change. And to your point, it was kind of funny, like that entrepreneurial bug was still going. And like my buddy and I were always throwing around like stupid ideas that we wanted to, start so we could be on the yacht.
It all starts with a good, stupid idea.
Yeah, exactly. You got to start somewhere. And we still crack up about it, but that was the dream, right? We'll sell like gold iPhone cases and we'll be making millions. And like, that's not how any of that works, but the bug was there from the beginning. And then, I kind of worked my way from that job. I did the basic stuff, I was applying online. I was doing everything we're supposed to do, you're told to do. None of that was working. So I sort of had to get creative and figure out a different way to get in the door, both with, the job and then the business as well further down the road.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, you're like at that point though, you got that bug. You're not letting that go. You're like, I'm going to hold on. Same thing with me, man. I didn't know that I was going to be like editing people's podcasts and then like hiring videographers to do I didn't know that. I knew that I had kind of similar thing. Like I knew I had some kind of entrepreneurial thing. I had like a small DJ business in high school and like things like that, like little stuff, but you just don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to, amount to or come to. Cause it could be that little idea that you weren't that invested in could be the best idea and, create the business. But yeah, after that, I'd like to, kind of go. So I assume it was kind of at that time when Cultivated Culture started, or was there other kind of businesses before that you started to get into that entrepreneurial thing? And then were you also you would just continue to work as well during that?
Yeah. So, Ryan, to your point, like, I think it's interesting because all these people are afraid to start something or even do something that they're, excited about because somebody tells them like, oh, like you could never make money being a DJ. Like, what do you think? You're like the next Avicii or something. And it's like, geez, thanks a lot, for real. And, but now all of a sudden, through DJing and through working with audio and stuff, that intersects with this, crazy rising tide of podcasting. And now all of a sudden you have a business. And so it was sort of the same thing for me. Like in college, I started a music blog. And so this was back in the day when like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Fresh New Tracks or any of those blogs from like she's like 6-7 years ago or something now. But anyways, I saw them and I'm like, well, they're doing this and I like music. So like, let me post songs that I like and write about them. So I did that and I got, hardly any visits whatsoever, but I had to figure out how to build the website and how to create the blog and all that good stuff. Then after that, I ended up trying to start a fishing apparel business because I was big into fishing, still am. I just don't get to do it as much up here. But, I wanted to, start a clothing company of some kind. And that fell flat on its face. But I actually worked like with the designers and kind of got some prototypes, ready to go. We kind of got to that point. And that fell flat on its face, but I had to, go find those designers. I had to go work with them. I had to kind of go through the process of, working with freelancers and vendors and stuff. And then I graduated. And at one point I had an idea for an app that would, show you where everybody was going out that night and who was going out and all that. And I spent, a couple of $1,000 building a prototype. And then lo and behold, like a week later, 3 apps that did the exact same thing launched.
Every time, man.
Yeah, with like funding and the whole deal. And I was just like, dagger. But all that stuff kind of taught me different skills. And so the way that things progressed was I graduated and I started applying online and nothing was happening. And I was getting these kind of pity interviews from family, friends and stuff. And the response is the same. You just don't have enough experience in this digital marketing, this digital advertising space. So I said, okay, I need to avoid this online app thing, but I also need to have something to speak to. So I went out and I started just teaching myself digital marketing. And I spent a couple of months doing that. And then I started freelancing my services. So I did it for free at first to get a couple case studies. And then I started pitching people out there and just I sent thousands of cold emails to random businesses all over the US until, a couple of them said yes. And I just started doing, freelance stuff for them. So that was going on while I was going through like the job search and the career progression that led me to Microsoft. And that was really the experience that Microsoft bought into because, everything else is fairly non-traditional. And weirdly, the experience I got freelancing actually ended up being a really good fit for the role that I do at Microsoft now. But then once I got in at Microsoft and all these people started asking me, hey, how'd you do this? How'd you make that career change? That's when Cultivated Culture started. But to your point, it really all builds on itself. Like I was able to build the Cultivated Culture website myself because I built that music blog. And then I was able to find freelancers to help me with the stuff I couldn't do for a pretty good price because I'd done, the apparel thing. And then whenever I wanted to build something new or a web page or a tool or whatever, I had that experience kind of mocking up the app. And so all these things that I did before that, seemed like waste of time in the moment, they ended up coming in handy because otherwise I would have had to go out and, try to get seed funding or take a loan or whatever to build the website and do all that stuff. But, because I just tried those things out at one point, I was able to do it myself and get it up and running. So you never know what whatever you're working on now, whatever you're passionate about, getting out there and doing it and, creating a portfolio of some kind, you never know what that stuff's going to lead to.
It's so important that you touched on the freelancing too. And that's so funny because I didn't even know that about you. And what a common thread that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs. And, because freelancing for me, I was working a blue collar job. I just didn't want to be a mechanic anymore. I loved it, but I just didn't want to, I would come home and do this. Right. And all my podcasts were after 5 o'clock at night. And all my music that I made was, 5 p.m. I would come home from my 9 to 5, work out, eat dinner, and then make a podcast or music, whatever, till midnight. And I go to, you know how it is.
Yeah. Do it all over. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I was like, damn, can I just let me just try, can I make $100 doing something that is digital and the money goes to my account and I don't have to, it's no cash. It's not even face to face. And then I made my first, I think it's funny because you said the experience of making your own website and doing all this. It's kind of like a fake it till you make it thing because I created fictional voiceovers for fictional companies that I worked for, but they didn't ask me for a voiceover. But so if they looked at it, the company was real, but they wouldn't, I just used their name and I created the voiceover. That was my testimonials. And then I got my first voiceover. I think I made $75.
Nice.
Maybe an hour or two of work. The levels weren't even great. It's like I was still learning, right? But it all came back to that kind of first day of freelancing and so much. I mean, contracts. I mean, I have people asking me that are 55, 60 years old, oh, how'd you learn how to make a contract? Even the fact that I literally just Googled it and changed the stuff for me. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even run it by the lawyers, right? You got to just make the first shitty contract to get, to understand how it works. But you're so right. It always comes full circle. And that's a question that people ask me and probably ask you too all the time is how does this all tie in, right? And for me, exactly what you touched on is the music. People want theme songs for their podcast. They might have an editor, but they don't have somebody who can make a theme song. Okay, I'll do the theme song. Or another podcast platform, right? You edit podcasts too? Hey, $75 for a 30-second theme song. You want to charge them $150? Go for it, right? Just those type of things, getting your foot in the door and it all coming full circle. You don't need to make – people think it's about the money. It's really just about kind of doing it, to start. So, right? And then, freelancing then leads into the business and then everything else. But do you have aspirations to, make Cultivated Culture, something larger, or is it just you? Do you have a team? And I probably want to, after this question, I'll probably ask you more about actually what it is, in depth, but.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely the goal is the big goal for Cultivated Culture is to get more tools and more, information around the modern job search in the hands of job seekers. I think one of the most frustrating things for me when I was looking for a job was the fact that all this advice out there seemed so outdated. It was, focused on this process that didn't make any sense. And a lot of it was conflicting. And now having gone through it, and coming out the other side, a lot of it focuses on, minutia and small stuff that at the end of the day doesn't really matter.
5 years of college and they don't teach you any of that too. How
For
crazy
real.
is that?
It's insane, but they charge you, out the wazoo for the tuition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. And not only that, but like, what's your credit score? How do you rent an apartment or any of this stuff?
Imagine you're in school for literally like 18 years and you have no practical life skills.
Seriously, it's crazy. But you can like read a book and write a book report, which, I've done a million times in my professional career.
True. Yeah. But the thing is, and then finding it all online too.
Yeah. 100%.
Both of us did, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's definitely, the aspiration. That's the cool part about having the job. Like I can make longer term investments in cultivated culture. So we built out some tools, we've kind of upgraded some stuff, but and I have one person who helps me with it. She's sort of like a jack of all trades, is doing, as you're kind of responsible for everything when you're running your own thing. So she kind of helps me out with some of that, but it took a really long time to get there. I mean, I loved your point of like, let me try to make my first $100 because, I put the site up and I was just throwing articles out there and I built an email list. I finally got to 1,000 people or whatever. And I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get somebody to pay like even like $20 for something.
Right.
And it scales from there. And I see so many people, they want to start a business. So they spend like, $1,000 on their website and they, LLC the business and they do all this stuff before they've, figured anything out or before they've
sold anything. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a slow build. Like I redid the website and I really started investing in all these tools around like year 3.5, 4. But before that, it was all, self-operated, self-built, the whole deal. And it was definitely a build. Like you make a lot of mistakes, right? You create the shitty contract and you get it out there. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely in a very, very different place now than it was when it started. But, the goal is to keep going onwards and upwards. So we'll see, but
and so those tools that you mentioned, I'd like to dive into those a little bit too, which I really I knew you had them, but I just kind of looked at them today and just to understand. Sure. You have free tools for people to, not only design their resume, but to actually help them kind of, help them get the job as well at the companies that they want. So you were just like, I'm going to invest in these tools and the value of the tools will, get people into, what I'm building here. Was that kind of your mindset behind it? I assume you have to hire somebody to, create them and everything, it's an investment, like you said.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the big thing is like, if you look at the trajectory of marketing and whatnot, 15 years ago, SEO was kind of like the Wild West. Like people were, if you started a blog, you were sort of the first person in your space. And so you could get away with content that wasn't so great. And, there wasn't a ton of competition. And now that's sort of changed. There's a lot of competition for SEO in every niche. And it's just not enough to write, more and better content because all these articles are massive, long guides and all this at this point. So the next step that people are kind of gravitating towards, and also the way you kind of capture emails and whatnot has changed. Like most people aren't as into like the pop-ups or the lead magnets, the free ebook and stuff. And so you need another way to get people in the door. So the tools are really nice for that. And I sort of noticed myself, I would use other people's free tools and inevitably, one, I'd give them my email address, but then two, I'd probably sign up for the full thing if it was valuable. And so that was the same thing, for me, but I decided not to charge people for the reason we mentioned before. Like I can make those longer term investments. And also, I got frustrated with the tools that were out there for job seekers. You'd spend 20 minutes making your resume and then you get slapped with a paywall and it's like, hey, pay $40 a month. And you're like, well,
happened to me so many times, right?
Yeah. I don't have that kind of money right now or, whatever it is. So, people are are totally good with using a tool, and they seem to be totally good with kind of exchanging an email address for the value that you give in the tool. And so the term I've heard is product-led growth. So essentially, creating some of these products and putting them out there for free, either having a freemium model so you charge later, or just using it as a lead magnet. That tends to work really, really well. And I've seen, I've seen that, in real time. Like that's happened for the site. It's been crazy, the growth since we pushed out the tools. So that's been a lot of fun to build. But to your point, yeah, we hired somebody, we hired a developer to build them out. That definitely wasn't me. So it's been fun though. You have an idea in your head and you kind of mock it up, and then it becomes a reality. Like it's sort of like an addicting process to see that happen.
Yeah, and once I assume once you make the first one, you let people use it, you're kind of watching it on the back end of like, oh man, what's next, right? And I want to just real quick, just touch on them. You have 4 in front of me, but it seems like there may even be more. I don't know if there's more, but the main one, which seems like probably the most popular one, you could probably tell me if I'm right, is the resume builder. Mm-hmm. I assume, was that the first one?
Yeah, that was the first one, and that's been around the longest, and it's definitely by far the most popular as of right now.
And so what is that, do you start from scratch? Like, do you like just input, your experiences, or does it tell you kind of how to do the copy on it too? Like, what is I'll definitely link it so people can go through, and it's free. Yeah. So, I assume they'll, definitely be used. I'll use it just cause sometimes I apply for jobs just to see, so I think I'm probably doing it all wrong though, judging by this, but yeah. So what is, how does that resume builder work?
Yeah, for sure. So there's 3 resume tools, and they kind of all work together. The builder was the first, and then we built a scanner and a bullet analyzer. And essentially the whole thing is like, you can have the resume builder helps you with the template, and it kind of helps you organize everything. It makes it look nice, and that's great. Having a nice looking resume is important, but the place where people really fall short is the content and selling themselves through their content and their resume versus just kind of summarizing what they do. So the bullet analyzer is another tool, and you basically copy paste a bullet from your resume. It scans the bullet and it looks for, basically compares it to what we have created to be like the quote, like ideal resume bullet formula. So we just have a breakdown of like the percentage of hard and soft skills, the percentage of measurable metrics, the percentage of action words that you should use. And it compares it and it gives you a score. So the idea is you kind of go through your resume and you put all your bullets through the resume bullet analyzer, and then you just copy and paste the bullet with a high score into the resume builder. And then once
like
you're
an SEO
done,
tool kind of just for resume, right? Amazing.
Exactly. And it was actually, it's based on a couple, a lot of the tools are based on or borrow features from tools that I've used as a marketer. Like marketing and job searching are very, very similar. And
well, you're like marketing and selling just for yourself,
right? Like you're the product. So, and most people don't realize that. So yeah. And then the scanner, basically once your resume is done, you dump it in the resume scanner and you put your job description on the other side, and it scans the two and compares, how well does your resume match up to the job description. And so if you kind of go through the 3, you should end up with a resume that has bullets that are, really well formulated, that align with, what the robots are looking for when you apply online. That should give you a better chance of getting in the door. So yeah, they sort of all work in tandem, and the builder was first, and the other 2 sort of came out of necessity of people asking me, hey, well, what's next? What do I do after the builder?
Yep. Yeah. So I'd like to, if we had all the time, I definitely would go through all the tools, but I would rather just people, use them for themselves. For sure. Even if you're not going to apply for a job this week, just might as well just use it. See, get your resume so it's ready once that job pops up. And, I have like for broadcasting, it's called I Hire Broadcast, and it just sends me broadcast jobs. It just like, on those different sites of just sending me, all these jobs. But I'm not sure if that's relevant. On your LinkedIn, it says helping you apply for jobs without applying online, right? So yeah. What does that mean? Am I calling the CEO? Like, what is
for sure. And that's always the funny thing, because I have like all these resume tools, right? But then I'm like, we'll get you a job without applying online. And really the thing that's sort of happened is that, so the way it happens is twofold. One, if you want to get in the door at most companies today, you got to find a referral. So it's about going out there and, to your point, either emailing the CEO or emailing somebody who's going to be able to influence your ability to get hired. And then it's just about building a relationship with them. The second piece is finding a way to illustrate your value. So most people, they rely on a resume, they rely on a cover letter, but those aren't the best ways to illustrate what we bring to the table. And then, most people struggle to illustrate their value through that format, simply because, we use a language that's super weird. We use a template that, or a document that we don't use anywhere else. So it's just really foreign and not conducive to, the end goal. So a value validation project is essentially, a deliverable that you put together that allows you to, it's essentially a pitch deck that allows you to kind of focus on the value you bring to the table, especially if you've done your research on the company and you know what they're looking for. Those two things make up the core of my job search system. But that system tends to be very new to a lot of people. And so, if I just went out there and said like value validation project is my term. So like nobody's running Google searches for value validation projects. So if I just relied on that, nobody would find me. So I sort of, my goal is to meet people where they're at and kind of hold their hand and bring them to, this new approach to job searching. And so everybody's out there, looking for a resume builder, looking for a way to beat the applicant tracking system. And so the tools kind of help me show up there. And then they get kicked into the email funnel. And then, bit by bit, email by email, we kind of introduce them to this new process, this new system. And then they see the light a little bit. But even with that approach, you still need a resume, because if somebody's referring you in, the first thing they say is, send me your resume so I can pass it along. So you still need a good resume. And there is a little bit of a tie-in there. But I think especially if you're coming at something with a brand new approach or a totally different, way of doing things that people aren't used to, that's great, because that's a big differentiator. But you also have to realize that, most people aren't on that level yet. So you sort of have to walk it back a little bit and meet them, at the level that they're at right now, and then help them, kind of walk with you to, where you want them to be.
Yeah. And so you're really emphasizing kind of the foot in the door, person to person, the relationship building aspect of it as well. Cause you can't automate that. You can systematize it a little bit for sure. But, there isn't a tool that's going to develop a relationship for you. So I love that. That's the importance. I mean, that's how I've gotten, I've said so many times on this and other podcasts is like, I went to college, I did the thing, like whatever, but goes to the internship fairs and all that. I've never gotten a job that was from any of that. I've only gotten jobs from me. I remember the marketing company I was at. I just called. I acted like I was a company, and I just booked a call with the marketing person. Happened to be the CEO. Then there's a foot in the door. Hey, you want to come in for an interview? I just asked. Got a little lucky. Obviously, it's the luck, the opportunity, as well as the planning. But I've never gotten nobody ever has just given me something, or I haven't gotten it from all these cookie cutter ways that we're supposed to. Yeah. And I like how you touched on that too, of just kind of differentiating yourself, but also meeting them where they're at. Cause you can't go too far. It's not like every company is the most innovative and the most new. And a lot of these companies are older companies that are, maybe just have, still have those standard kind of ways of going about business. Mm-hmm. So then you got to meet them on that in between.
For sure.
So what would your advice be, other than, the tools you have and all the resources? But when it comes to do you guide them on the, on the interview itself too? Do you have tips for that? Or, what is the kind of that, I guess, that next step in the process?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a lot of stuff on interviewing as well on the site. Hard to put tools against that, as you can imagine, but all the person to person stuff, the whole goal with the tools is to make the non-person to person, face-to-face stuff easy and quick, so that you can spend more time building those relationships or, getting ready for the interviews. But, the big next step is, once you get the referral and you sort of have your value validation project, it's getting ready for those interviews and making sure that you're in a really good position. And that the whole thing, you just mentioned it a couple minutes ago, but it's a marketing process. And so, a lot of people show up in the interviews and they start talking about themselves, and it's not about you really. The company cares about what you can do for them. So their interest in you, extends to the point at which, you're showing them what you can do for them, what you can bring to the table for them. And I think a lot of people forget that, and they just focus on, hey, here's what I've done for all these other companies that aren't you. So it's really about tailoring your story to, knowing your audience and tailoring your story to that audience, which in this case, is whoever you're sitting across from at the interview table. So, that's the big next step. But if you can get in the door, if you can have that connection, like you said, the more you put yourself out there, the luckier you get, right? Like the more emails you send, the more, ways that you try, something's going to click. And I think too many people are afraid to just put themselves out there and try. They're looking for that silver bullet, the first time and every time. And that's just not a realistic thing. So, the more you try, the luckier you get. And, if you're not afraid to kind of step outside of the box and find different ways to do this, everybody else in the job search is doing the same thing. And it's true with companies too. Everybody else starting businesses is mostly doing the same thing as well. And so if you can find a little bit of a different way to show up, or to just be like, if you master one channel that not everybody else is using, you can really make a killing, and you can do it a lot faster than if you just try to do the cookie cutter stuff that, everybody else is out there doing as well.
Yeah, I think people accept defeat way too easy, man. I think people I don't know. I think they're comfortable. I think they want to, because they just say, oh, they didn't call me back.
Yeah. Blame's not on you, right? It's on the company.
On everybody else, because that's what, somebody else got you your first job, which happened to me, my first gas station that I worked at, right? Somebody else got me the job, and so you're kind of in that mindset of like, it's always somebody else has to hand it to me, has to feed it to me, has to accept me, has to, well, they didn't like me. Okay. Like, hey, they don't care if they like you or not, man. Like, obviously they have to like you, but what value do you bring to the table, right? Is kind of, number one. And I think that kind of accepting defeat is very, prominent, but it just sucks. Like, why don't you think about it? Just change the paradigm a little bit, shift it. Okay. The what you should say, I guess, is, okay, they didn't call me back. What else can I do? First of all, why? And what else can I do? And what other avenues can I explore? Like, you want to get, I don't know if you teach this, or I assume it's probably in there, but you kind of want to get that hard no, but you want to get to the spot where you can get the hard no. All right. Like, I literally maxed everything out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to happen. Okay. But at least I tried all I can, except instead of, they just didn't get back to me. Well, that's it. Wasn't meant to be, right? And I'm the type of person that I think I can control everything. I think I can have control over, most of the things that happen. And other people are kind of on the other spectrum. Oh, I just let it go. I just see what happens. I just let it flow, and that's two different, none of them's better or worse. But I think when it comes to job searching, you can't be on that accepting defeat mentality. And I think, you probably mentioned that too, of like kind of the mentality that you're in, and kind of indirectly what we've been talking about is you have to be mentally there, like ready to go and explain yourself. And unfortunately, they don't teach those things, those personality or character traits. I mean, it's really comes down to your character too.
Yeah. In school, I've talked about this a little bit, but it's a bummer. Like, failure is something we're taught to like avoid at all costs. Right? Like, you fail that test, and now all of a sudden it's like a semester's worth of like late nights in the library to get your grade back up to, a respectable place. But in the real world, failure is sort of part of the process, right? And nobody's been successful, nobody's grown without failing, not just once, but many, many times. So I mean, for me, I had a rule that I told myself, I called it the double nope rule. So like, you would have to tell me no twice before I went away.
Love it.
So at every stage, if I got rejected for a job, that was one no. So now I'm going to go back and find another way to get in the door. And if I do that and I get told no again, then okay, maybe I feel comfortable moving on. And it worked. Like, I was interviewing at Google, and the first screen I had with the recruiter, we got on the phone, and she just didn't give me a chance to sell myself. She just kept kind of shutting me down and telling me I didn't have enough experience. And then after the call, she ghosted me for like a month. So I followed up with her 5 times. She finally got back to me and was like, hey, you just didn't have enough experience. So this was sort of impulsive, but I just sent her an email, and I was like, look, I get it. Like, I don't have the experience on my resume, but that doesn't mean that's not a lack of ability to do the job. It's just, a lack of opportunity. I haven't had the opportunity.
It's a lack of what they think you need.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, like, I have this freelance business where I sell your products. Like, I do lead generation using Google Ads, and I'm the salesperson, I'm the account manager, I'm the janitor, I'm the support person, I'm the finance person. Like, I'm everything, and it's all with your products. And I'm like, look, just if the hiring manager, if I go into the interview process and they hate me, like, you'll never hear from me again, but like, give me a chance to get in the interview process. And she did. She pushed me through to the next round. And, that wouldn't have happened if I just said, okay, I don't have enough experience. I guess I'll try again, next year or whatever it is. So, and that's one example of, dozens probably between the two of us that we could share. Like,
Oh yeah.
That's the biggest thing. If you're able to, all the other stuff is what it is. But if you have the mentality of like, you have to tell me no twice or three times, that's going to take you way, way further than any like little resume hack or any, little marketing hack or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's going to make up for anything that's lost to the gap in the resume or whatever. I took a year off. I had this business. I did that. Like, you're just straight willing. Like, that's how you are as a person too. So then, they hire, like, you're not as much of a stand back person. You're more of, hey, I'm at the forefront of this. I got to get these things done. Like, you're so persistent and consistent in the beginning. And like, even that, is like just a crazy quality to have to begin with, but it's not something that's easy to build up. You might have it, you might not. You can work on it. But yeah, no, that's crazy, man. Like five emails and ghosted for a month, man. You would have been anybody else, right? Like, what we're taught to do is, like, coming back to it, is to accept defeat, which is just crazy. Like, oh, man, like, you got to start it here. I want to ask you, has there been people have you had to help anybody leave their job? Have you ever been in that process? Because I just have recently experienced some of that, not for myself, but some people around me, and that being very difficult when people are it's like a marriage. Like, it's, you're at somewhere so long, you're comfortable. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah. So do you mean like people who are like looking to leave after being in a job for a long time, or like have accepted an offer? Or?
Yeah, kind of, or like leaving a shitty job, or leaving to become, start the business and become, an entrepreneur, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely have. And I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, that's the $1 million question, right? That I'm sure you get asked, and I've been asked a lot, is, when do you leave your job? And also, awesome, why haven't you quit your job?
Left your job, yeah.
And like,
you're not an entrepreneur yet, dude.
Exactly. And it's different for everybody, but being able to start your own business while working full time is a huge, huge advantage, because you get to make long-term investments, and you get to mess up, and you get to try new things. And so, the big advice I have for everybody is, if you can stick it out, do it. Even if your job is miserable, trying to figure out a way to spend, 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. or whatever, working on your side thing until you get it up to a decent spot. That's a huge, huge thing to do. But at the end of the day, like, I think we're all, we hear a lot about passion, and like, it's sort of made to seem that you can only be passionate about one thing. And that's not true. And we change as we grow, right? Like, we're passionate about different things at different times. And so at a certain point, the company that you're at, whether you love it or whether you hate it, like, it's played a role in your life. And now, it's time for the next chapter. And, hopefully you're feeling good about that next chapter. Hopefully you're feeling good about the leap. And if you're not, maybe it's not time to make the leap yet. Maybe it's time to find another solution. But for the most part, I think that self-reflection and understanding, does this feel right? And, if I'm nervous, am I nervous because I'm excited as well as kind of terrified at what might happen? Or am I nervous because, this doesn't seem like the right time? There's different, there's nuances in the way that you feel about it. Yeah. And you need to pay attention to that, because if it's not the right time, the worst thing you can do is leave a job, even if it's awful. Not obviously, if you're miserable and depressed and all that, that's a different story. But if it's just like you hate doing your job and it's just boring and not what you want to do, is leaving to start something that could potentially fail, well before you've even set the groundwork, is that the right thing to do? Will that make you less miserable, or does that bring on a whole new set of problems? So you really have to think through stuff. And to your point, getting out there and focusing on the action instead of, don't get the LLC or spend $1,000 on the website. Like, go validate the product or the service or whatever you're selling first. And then, you can go do the rest of that stuff. But the quickest way out is to find that person who will pay you whatever it is, the $20, the $100, the $1,000, whatever level you're getting in at. If you can find that and make that happen, like, that's the starting point.
Yeah. There's people who make hundreds of millions of dollars a year on businesses they're not passionate about, and that's just what they do. And you get to choose what you're passionate about. People don't. There's so much that you get to choose that you have control over, but it's so much easier to say that, I don't. Oh, it's somebody else has to, it's just fate, or, So, but I'm really glad you mentioned passion, and it's something that, you know, comes up a lot. It's like, I'm passionate about music. I didn't realize how passionate I was about podcasts. Now it's probably equal. I
Yeah.
also love cars, and I'm definitely passionate about that too. You know, I don't do it every day anymore. Who knows? Maybe I will at some
Yeah.
point. But like, I'm not passionate about like an Amazon business a store that I might invest in and start. But like, if it's passive income, I'm passionate about passive income. All right. Like, if you just passionate about one step of the process, then, you know, the other steps that's just the other work you got to put in to keep it going. But
100%.
yeah, I want to ask you just before we wrap, like a very little, like this just little nuanced thing that I always see on TikTok, and I made a video about it too before. People copying and pasting the job description into their resume to
So
beat the algorithm. If you could Mythbusters this right now, that'd be great.
for sure. Yeah, that's definitely not a good thing to do. So one, it's super obvious when people do that. And then two, you know, at the end of the day, sure, that'll get you, you know, let's say it does what you want it to do and it gets you through the robot scan. Well, now your resume is in the hands of a human who's just going to look at that and be like, this is the job description. Like, what is this? So it's you're not going to make it through at any step in the process. You're going to get stonewalled at some point. So the best thing that you can do is kind of extract the keywords, because the keywords that the robots are looking for are in there. So you need to figure out, you know, what those are. And that's pretty easy to do. There's a bunch of tools like, you know, we have the scanner that does that. There's a couple of other tools out there that do that. But then you need to take those keywords and you need to find a way to naturally weave them into bullets that, you know, basically illustrate your value in a compelling way. So, you know, I don't
the little
blame job
hacks and the little cheats are only going to they're not going to make a big.
Yeah.
But everybody wants that. Oh, let me do this little thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And
so
it's, and I don't really blame job seekers because, well, one, us as humans, like to your point, Ren, like everybody's looking for that little hack or the easy thing to do, but like nothing that's worth doing is easy. Like starting a business is not easy. You know, writing a resume that gets you a job is not easy, but we always try, like, we're just geared towards the path of least resistance. And so that's why, you know, applying online, so many people still do it because it's a structured process that's easy to do. It's not easy to get results, but it's easy to complete the process.
And I think they think, oh, it's just a robot. Like, they don't even care about me anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they're a business and they have 3,000 applicants.
Yeah.
So,
but if you get beaten down by robots enough, like, you don't care anymore and you just do the easy thing because you just are like, well, I'm just going to get rejected again anyway. So it's a little bit on both sides. Like, I don't really blame job seekers, but what I would say is, like, if something's not working for you, if like some process isn't working for you, an easy hack is not going to fix that process. Otherwise, everybody else would be doing it. Like, the biggest thing to remember is if it's easy for you, it's easy for everybody else. And so that's, if it's easy and it's seeing results, everybody would be doing it. There's a reason that everybody isn't doing it and seeing results. So if a process isn't working for you, like, find a different process, like try something new and take a fundamental shift, not just like, oh, I'll copy and paste the job description this time, but like, let me go book a call with, you know, the marketing person turns out to be the CEO. Let me ask him for an interview. Like, go find a fundamentally different way to get in the door and then continue that. You know, if it doesn't work, keep going. Like, failure isn't a time for you to say like, well, this doesn't work and I'm done with this. Like, it's a time to say, all right, I crossed one more thing off the list. Like, let me try something new. And it's all the difference in mindset, right? There's like the Edison quote that everybody quotes, like, he found 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb. But that's kind of the truth. Like, I didn't fail at getting the job. I just found a way that didn't work. So I'm going to go try a different way next time and see if that works. And I'm just going to keep going until I find something, you know, that clicks and that makes it happen. And that's true for job searching. That's true for business, like anything that you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's a great point to end on. Before we go, I just want to mention it's cultivatedculture.com. And is there anything else that they should be looking out for? You know, would you say, you know, is Resume Builder the first one that they should download, take a look at? Any other resources? You know, what's the best way to be within the Cultivated Culture?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so all the free tools are right on the homepage there, or if you go to cultivatedculture.com/tools, they're all right there on that page as well. And then LinkedIn, man, I mean, you and I connected there and I'm pretty active there pretty much every day. So if anybody listening wants to connect or wants to follow along, that's one of the best places to find me.
Awesome. LinkedIn is the wave, man. I could go off another podcast about that, right?
For sure. We could talk all day.
Yeah, right. Exactly. What a great platform. And yeah, the reason that, we were able to do this podcast today too. So thank you so much, Austin, for coming on the show. And CEO of Cultivated Culture, and he's done many other things too. So all the links, as always, are in the description. We're on every platform, even the ones nobody uses. So thank you guys so much for listening. And thank you, Austin, for doing this today.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it, man.